and the United Kingdom.
Good evening. This weekend, President Bush begins a 9-day trip to Europe, which will include stops in Poland and Hungary. At a press conference, the president said he will go to those Eastern Bloc nations to promote democracy. He said the challenge facing the West will be to create the conditions needed for the Poles and Hungarians to recover economically, to make a successful transition toward democracy. Mr. Bush says his stops in those countries will highlight a period of unprecedented change that could be the beginning of an historic process of European reconciliation and an end to the artificial division of Europe. Well, just how much change can a country like Hungary manage? The winds of reform have already begun to shift, but the direction is uncertain.
1956. Calls for democracy were brutally answered with Soviet tanks, bullets, and a Soviet-installed government. 33 years later, communism is again under attack as Hungary finds its own voice and tests the limits of the possible.
There is a recognition in the Communist Party itself that things can't go on as they used to. Something has to be done.
Something is being done, overhauling socialism. Reforms underway or under consideration: freedom of assembly, association, and political affiliation, more freedom of the press, the right to own property, the right to hold referendums on certain issues, and the abolishment of capital punishment for political crimes. Reformers are fighting for independent political parties, free elections, and a new constitution. They say the new Hungarian constitution should be citizen-centered and protect individual and political rights. These Western-style reforms were triggered by glasnost, but accelerated when the Hungarian government rehabilitated former Prime Minister Imre Nagy. Nagy was executed in 1958 as a traitor for leading the 1956 uprising, but was recently reburied and given a hero's funeral. Miklos Vásárhelyi was the spokesman for Nagy's short-lived democratic government.
We will make anything possible, anything in our power to make it sure that this time the transition from the one-party system dictatorship to the multi-party democratic system should go on peacefully, without confrontation and without social explosion.
The multi-party system could erode the Communist Party's claim to legitimacy. Previously banned political parties are resurfacing and others are forming. The government is talking with opposition groups and newly formed trade unions to create rules for democratic elections. But the question that must be answered: are the changes irreversible, or could Hungary's communist government be playing for time before cracking down? The scope and pace of the reforms has caused sharp disagreements within the Communist Party. Hardliners say reform is moving too quickly, while prominent reformers say steady change is needed to ensure political stability and economic vitality.
You have to change the whole political, institutional framework to change the economic structure of this country.
Reforms may encourage some Hungarians, but critics say the masses are more concerned with the country's growing economic hardship. What is at the end of the reform rainbow? A market-oriented democracy or communism with a more polished image? Peter Dallet, European Journal, Budapest.
It's one of the toughest schools in America, and it produces the Army's best. It takes all the right stuff to graduate from West Point, and the class of 1993 is just now finding out what the right stuff is. Let's meet West Point's newest member.